We want to tell you about our friend Heidi. She's an amazing artist and designer, and she is the person who's designed our new logo. It's amazing, and every day we notice another detail we'd somehow missed before. You can also employ her services if you so wish, because she can do you a fantastic portrait of your dog or cat. Just send her some photos of your pet, and she'll put her own special talents to work, creating a work of art that is both unique and special to you and your special friend. But these are no ordinary portraits. No. She makes them into characters that accentuate their personality. She's done some themed as pirates, hillbillies, theatre ushers, old ladies and gentlemen, pilots. She even made one into Godzilla. You could even have one done of your pet as a mascot for your favourite ball team. Of course, if you just want a normal portrait, she can do that too. We really recommend that you go along to her website or Instagram page to see more of her work. Her website is www.angelbot3d, that's ANGELBOT 3D.com. And her Instagram is at angelbot3d. You won't be disappointed. Oh, and incidentally, this is not a paid advertisement. It's a recommendation for a friend who's really talented. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Weird, Wacky and Wonderful Stories podcast with your hosts, Shelley and Bella. Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 46 of the Weird, Wacky and Wonderful Stories podcast.
Hi everybody.
We're going to go straight into the show this time, guys, because we've got quite a long show for you. We're speaking to someone all the way from Australia. In fact, she's south of Brisbane in a town called Ipswich. Her name is Harmony, and she's going to tell us about an entity that she's been sharing her house with. So please welcome all the way from Australia, Harmony.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, Harmony. Well, we heard about you through Instagram, and we've been following your story on there. And before we get into the crux of this, I know that you were a little bit dubious initially about telling this story because of fears that people may think you were crazy.
Absolutely, yes.
How has it been received so far?
Well, I haven't had a single person yet to my face call me crazy. People seem a lot more interested and curious than doubtful and, I guess, ridiculing sort of thing. So I've been quite lucky and, happy about that.
I think that's probably because more people probably see things than they admit or experience things that, that they don't want to admit.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I didn't understand that before. You watch shows and you see people that have kept stuff under their hat and you think, why didn't you just tell somebody? Like, how hard is it? But when you are actually in that position of experiencing things that in your rational mind, you're saying to yourself, this can't be happening. It's not like, I don't think so. You're trying to shoot down any possibility of it really happening. And I mean, that's the way that I went into it. And being someone that I think is quite rational and quite unprone to jumping down the whole ghost avenue as soon as, you hear a bump in the house. It took a lot. It took a lot for us to go, this is what we've got.
So before we get into the story then, can you tell us a little bit of a background about you?
Well, I am a mother of three. I have a 16-year-old son and I have a 10-year-old daughter and a just about to turn 3-year-old little boy. And the eldest son and my youngest son, we all live in a house in Ipswich in Queensland that we're renting while we are renovating a house further up the street, which is a much older house, funnily enough. So we've been in the house for about a year when anything strange began to happen, or that I started to notice the strange stuff. But besides that, I mean, I'm an athlete. I call myself an athlete. I play roller derby for Brisbane. I've been a music teacher for most of my life. My partner is a pyrotechnician and he works on movie sets occasionally and does fireworks and things like that for special events and explosions and all that sort of business. So he's a very scientifically based minded kind of guy, which is quite good to my musical sort of other other side. Yeah, we're just pretty much run-of-the-mill people that aren't or weren't spiritual or overtly anything. We definitely aren't religious or weren't religious. It's I have to now say things in the past tense because our experience changed so much about how we used to think and now how we think.
Yeah.
But yeah, we considered ourselves to be pretty normal folk.
So, what was the first sort of inkling that something wasn't quite right?
Well, I think we had, noises and things like that I, like anyone else, would just kind of shrug them off and say, okay, it's the wind or it's this, that, and the other. It was things like the front door opening or like the screen door, the first initial screen door opening, and there would be nobody there. That was the first stuff that really started to go, well, hang on, that's not the wind. And I know I heard that. It was definitely someone opening the front gate before they got to it. Like there's a gate right near the front door at the top of a set of stairs at the balcony to stop anyone, or a little child getting down the stairs. And I would hear the gate actually open, and the gate wouldn't be open and there would be nobody there. So that sort of stuff was the first initial, okay, that's a bit strange. But we didn't for a second think anything paranormal of it. All these little things kind of happened for, I don't know how long, but in the course of a week, these really, really noticeable and notable events began to happen. But it was only in the course of a week that it was really, really bad. We've still got it, but the bad stuff's gone.
Prior to moving into that house, had you experienced anything strange?
No, absolutely nothing. I figured that I was kind of one of those people that just wasn't susceptible or open to anything. I've always thought people may be in tune to something and that's why they see stuff. And I just didn't think that I was very sensitive at all because I had not had a single, unexplained experience that I could even remotely think of as paranormal. So, yeah, this was a whole eye-opening different thing.
You mentioned that obviously prior to this, you weren't religious. You hadn't had any paranormal experiences or anything to speak of beforehand. So what was your impression of the paranormal? If someone had come up to you in the streets and started to tell you things like, we're hearing these noises, screen door, et cetera, what would have been your kind of reaction to them? How would you have seen what they were saying?
Well, I actually had I believed in ghosts. I just thought that I wasn't someone that could see them. But right. I figured if there's so many people that have had these experiences that seem so rational and seem so, especially when there's been a lot of people witnessing, the same event, I thought, well, there's something in that. No, I found that whole stuff interesting. I liked scary movies. And notice I said liked.
Yes.
Another thing changed. But yeah, it was, so I had a pretty open mind to it. I definitely did not unbelieve people that claimed to have experiences. And my partner claimed to live in a house where, strange little things happened there too, where things were knocked off, like blasphemous record covers were knocked off from the walls, and they were the only ones that were knocked off. So he kind of had an open mind to this stuff as well, whereas, as I said, I hadn't experienced anything. So, yeah.
So over the course of the first week, you were saying that things started to add up a bit. So what happened?
The thing that really got my attention, I guess, the most was just hanging out with my son in the kitchen. And as he was not quite 2 at this point. And so he was just kind of getting a grasp of talking. And I was doing the whole bye-bye waving at him. And rather than wave back at me, he was waving at something else to the side of him.
Oh, right.
There was kind of like next to the kitchen, there was a doorway and a hall, but I was standing at the other end, so couldn't see the hall where I was actually angled in the kitchen. But he was definitely waving at something else. And I thought, well, that's strange. He's very analytical like his father, this child. He's not prone to kind of imaginary friends or chatting away to himself. It's just something he doesn't do.
Right.
So that was weird. It was something that he was definitely looking at and was trying to wave at. That's how it looked. Again, I didn't go ghosts, but I thought, okay, that's interesting. I'll keep an eye on things. So I think that was the first time that it might have crossed my mind.
And he didn't seem frightened by it?
No, not at this point. not at this point. He was, and it happened again not long after, but this time it was at the end of the hall, and he was sitting on the floor at the other end of the hall just waving to something, but he was trying to get me to look at it as well. He kept, mum, 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 and pointing, and there was nothing there that I could see. And that was when things started to get a bit more like, okay, now this is really interesting, just because of how insistent he was that I look at whatever he was looking at. And during this time too, I should mention that I was off, like I play a sport religiously, and I'd broken my wrist. So I was off training, and I was kind of unable to do a lot of stuff because of the broken wrist. And one day, this is when things started to take a turn for, okay, this could be, something that I can't understand or explain. He was in an inflatable castle that we had living in our lounge room, and he was lying on his back looking up at the ceiling, but he was yelling and screaming and kind of shielding his face from something that looked like it would have been above him. So basically like floating in the air directly above him. But whatever it was scaring the bejesus out of him. And I couldn't climb into the castle because of the cast on my arm. So I'm trying to coax him out with, Chase, just sit up and pop out. And he was it was like he didn't even want to remove the arm from his eyes to see what was above him. He was shielding himself. He was really, really troubled. I eventually managed to kind of one-armed, and it was really painful to watch it because I couldn't get in there quick enough because of this, ridiculous injury that I had. So that was when I started to think, I think this is a problem. I think I've got something in this house, and there's part of you still that's going, are you just being paranoid? Like if you tell anybody this and you're just being paranoid, you're going to look like an absolute fruitcake.
When he was shielding his face and you said that he was sort of screaming at something above him, was he saying any words that you could discern that might describe what it was he was seeing?
No, and I wish there had have been, but there was never any descriptive term until a little bit later, but I'll get to that
okay.
in a bit. But and I wanted to know what he was seeing so badly, and I wanted to know. It was I think just a lot of crying and maybe some no's, but that would have been probably the crux of what he was saying. But,
yeah, well, he was young as well, wouldn't he? He wouldn't have been able to maybe
as I said, he
articulate.
wasn't quite 2. Yeah, he was about 18 months old, I think, when this was happening. What would have happened after that? I kept seeing something out of the corner of my eye. See, it all sounds like such stereotypical cliche haunting stuff, the kids seeing somebody or seeing something, but I kept seeing something from the lounge to my right, which is, it's kind of an open plan sort of lounge room, dining room area, but in the dining room, and it was something that only looked like it was probably about 5 inches off the ground, and it just kept moving in the same spot, and it happened like every few minutes. It was getting ridiculous, and I knew it wasn't a mouse, and I knew we didn't have anything like that in the house. And you can usually see a glimpse of those things. You usually see like the brown kind of, but this was weird. It was almost like I could just see movement, but I could not see a shape or a color it was just movement, and it was just something that just like, what was that? But it just kept happening, and that's another thing that had me going, I don't know what quite that is. And I still didn't speak to anybody, including my partner, because I didn't know what he'd think. I think he'd say you've watched too many scary movies, which is what I was kind of saying to myself throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, you're home a lot more because you're injured, your mind's working overtime, etc., etc.
And that's exactly how it was. I'd just been stuck inside with Chase for days on end at this point too. So I was kind of just being a little hard on myself for even thinking that, and that's what I mean. Chase is talking to something. I'm seeing something out of the corner of my eye. He's just been screaming at something in his jumping castle, and I was still not prepared to go, I think I've got something in my house. So it took a little bit more convincing. Then one day I was lying on the lounge. So this is, again, still all in that week period. So this might be the day after the castle incident. It could even be the same day. It's hard to actually remember because I didn't put it into context until after the climax, if you will. But I was laying on the lounge, and I was talking to a friend about it only the other day who wanted to know the story. And I don't talk about this story to anybody. It's just a close family, and that's it. And that's if they need to know, sort of thing. What happened was I saw this thing like float across, like I'm lying down on the lounge, just kind of, I guess, worn out from chase. And it was like a transparent sort of, you know, when you have these transparent little blotches on your eyeball when you might look at the sun or something.
Yeah.
And they kind of move with you, you know, they move with your eye and you can never really, it was like one of those, just this line. It wasn't a full shape. It was just a line, like a foot, probably about a foot long too. So I knew it wasn't like an eye worm or whatever those things are. And it just kind of floated across my line of vision from where I was lying on the lounge. And I, again, just thought, oh, your eyes must be tired. Don't think much of it. But then I heard footsteps in the hallway. And these were like unmistakable adult, I've got to get somewhere footsteps, not like little faint ones or just slightly audible, or I had to, you know, really put the work into it to make out the footprints. It was someone walking in my house. And I'm looking at Chase and there's no one else home. And yeah, I think that's when I thought there's something. I was still just kind of curious about it at this point, like, oh, you know, maybe I've got a ghost. This is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. So silly thought. And then I think maybe the next day after, you know, I've kind of gone, okay, something's going on. But there was still that part of me that was fighting it. Like, no, because I still hadn't completely, I wasn't really looking at everything as a haunting at this point. I just thought, oh, that's kind of weird. I'll keep an eye on how things go, and it could be just that.
Yeah.
But I went into the bathroom, and this is the pièce de résistance, as I like to call it, where I called it the following day because I kind of knew that it was a climax when it happened. But anyway, I was in the toilet. As I walked in there, it was like I'd heard a male, like I was overhearing a conversation between maybe two men. And I'd heard one of them say something like, oh, how about we give schizophrenia a try? And it was just the oddest, strangest thing. But it didn't actually sound like it was coming from in the room. It sounded like it was almost planted inside of my head. It was the strangest thing. And I thought, what a random thought. And then secondly, I thought, why would I be having random thoughts in a masculine voice? You know, you rattle off stuff to yourself in your own voice generally. So I kind of just thought that's weird, that's interesting. And I didn't really, expect it to be what it was, that it was actually like a threat in a way. So fast forward to that evening, and the family had gone to bed, and as usual, I was the last person to get down for the night. And I was in the bathroom and I was about to brush my teeth, and I think I dropped the toothpaste on the ground. Something had dropped on the ground that I bent down to pick up. All of a sudden, it was like a chorus of, I don't even know how many male voices. Again, it was male. I don't know why. So I don't think it was a psychological kind of weird hallucination, but it was like just being abused by about 100 male angriest you've ever heard voices. But the thing that happened with this just moment, and it only lasted a moment, was that this feeling, and this is the hardest part, or was the worst thing I've ever felt in my life. It was like a feeling getting injected into you, or like an atomic bomb of just every negative, horrible, like with despair, just hurt, just black. And black was really the only thing that I could think of to describe it. And blackness in feeling is so hard to explain, because it wasn't like a normal emotion of, oh, I just felt a bit sad, or, oh, gee, wow, I felt really, really down. It was nothing like that. It was like an atomic bomb for a second of just pure evil and bad and dark, and just, it made me spring to my feet, run down the hallway, out the back door to just catch my breath. But this thing felt so intensely bad. And it just lasted for just that moment that the voices were going, but it almost felt like being grabbed and just pulled down into utter black for just a few seconds. And it was that intense that I was literally terrified of what else this thing could do.
Sorry, what were the voices saying?
Well, that's trying to recall what they were saying is It's really tricky because they were all kind of yelling different things, but it was just insulting, like swearing and, you're this and you're that. And it was just abuse. Like, it's all I remember. But I think it was such a stunning moment to have this, emotional feeling. Well, I can't even call it a feeling. It was just an incredible, like, emotional attack, I guess, that it's hard to actually recall what the voices were saying. But it was just abuse, and it was lots of just, you're this and you're, but all in unison, and just coupled with this amazing, in terms of being absolutely terrifying feeling that I can never ever explain to anybody, because it's just, I don't think there are words to describe this feeling except for black, just the worst thing ever.
So was it black in terms of sort of a fear or a worry, or was it black in terms of anger?
No, fear and worry and just absolute loss of hope. And it was just as if, it's weird because it felt for a split second like, I guess, when I was able to think about it the next day, it took me a day to even try and think about it. It was that terrifying. But it almost felt like if you were, say, a poor person that had maybe the world's worst case of schizophrenia, just hearing a chorus of abusive voices. And it was the feeling of being stuck in despair and just no hope of getting out of it, or no hope of seeing anything, light. It was just devoid of any positivity, and it was the worst and most terrifying sensation.
So this happened in the evening. You said you were going upstairs to brush your teeth, getting ready for bed. I take it your partner was home and your kids were in bed?
Yep, exactly. They were all in bed for the night already.
So did they hear anything? Obviously, they must have heard you, or certainly your partner probably heard you run down the stairs. You said you ran down the stairs and out of the house for a couple of seconds. So what was his reaction at that point? Did he hear you?
I think he had slept through everything. And no one else heard anything in terms of what I heard in the bathroom, which was really frustrating.
So it follows what you said earlier then about the kind of the voices almost being implanted in you rather than it being a auditory, audible sound that other people could hear.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it was like something had just been kind of placed there in the most horrible way of, and that's the thing, it didn't feel like the voices were actually in the room. And that was another scary part of it, because I thought maybe my brain invented that whole experience. There's still this part of me trying to make some sort of reason.
Like maybe there's something wrong with you mentally.
Yeah, like maybe I just had some sort of absolutely, what the hell was that? Every bad emotion I've ever stored in my brain, like, and then that scared me probably even more, because then I thought, if I'm capable of doing that once, I'm capable of doing that again. And I didn't really I didn't think it was possible even for myself to try and even recreate anything like that. It was literally like a bomb going off, and it only lasted for that few seconds, and then it was gone.
I'm just going to ask, before you carry on with the story there, I'm just going to ask, because I'm sure other people may wonder the same thing. You mentioned that you were off because of an injury. Were you taking any sort of medication in terms of painkillers or anything like that at the time?
Absolutely not.
No?
Nope, nothing
Okay.
like that.
All right, excellent. Okay, so yeah, carry on.
And I was completely awake too, because I'm one of those people that it takes a fair while to get to sleep once I've put my head down. So I wasn't in one of those, mid slumber sort of, which I know you can kind of, maybe dream partially. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a stunning thing that, coupled with, the worst feeling I've ever felt. So after this, the next morning I had to do a lot of work on the internet, and I was kind of just trying to distract myself, because this was really important stuff that I had to do for a roller derby website. And I'd arranged to be like, take over their website for a little, probably about 3 hours in the morning. So I'd worked really hard at, getting this all together, and just distracted myself from the whole last night episode. But I felt absolutely hideous. Like, I felt like I was just kind of on eggshells. I just felt panicked. I felt like I was literally having panic attacks at just very simple things, which is not me at all.
Well, there was probably an element of insecurity, because you're probably now doubting your own mind.
Well, yes, definitely. And there was still that fear, like, was that me, or was that... But then when I actually put the that weird thing that I'd heard in the toilet earlier in the day. It was like I just had this sudden feeling, and it was almost like a realization that it wasn't me at all. This thing had actually bullied, pardon my French, the shit out of me. And that's how I felt. I really felt bullied. And so I've done this thing in this web thing the following morning, and my partner's come home and he said, how did it all go? And I was like, look, I've had a terrible morning. And he was like, what, didn't it go very well? And I said, look, I need to talk to you, but I don't want to do it in this house. I need to get you out of the house. And, he was looking at me like, what are you going on about? But I really didn't. I felt like something could be listening to me.
Yeah.
And this is where you start feeling a bit nutty. You're like, but I did. I felt bullied, and I felt like I had been like emotionally violated by something that I had no chance of fighting against. And it was almost like all these pieces just kind of fit together, and it was like, no, this is what's happened. And that was terrifying as well, because you like feeling this thing. I can't express how hideously bad it was that, you're wondering when it's going to happen next. So I don't know if the panic attacks were just a result of being like, when is it going to happen again? Is something going to happen to Chase?
Sorry to interrupt, but are you now in you're still in that place?
Yes, we are.
Right.
We are. But there was a happy ending, thank goodness. It's a continuing ending, I guess. So I got my partner out of the house, and I explained to him, I broke down and was an absolute mess, telling him what happened. I think he was just looking at my face thinking, she obviously looks like she's rattled. And I think he believed me just for that reason alone. He didn't doubt me at all. And he went, okay, maybe we stay at our old house that we're renovating. We went up there for a few hours, and I still felt just dull and dark and kind of lethargic and not myself. Like I felt weird. I don't know what I did. I wanted to go back to the house. I could only stay at the old place for a few hours before I thought, you know what? I had a feeling that it wasn't going to do it again, but there was something worse that I was kind of suspecting. And I thought, I think it's kind of like something stuck to me. I feel like I'm carrying it when I leave the house. We've left the house. I don't feel like it's changed anything. I don't know why I felt like this. It's just how I felt at the time. And so we went back to the house, and I thought maybe it was Aaron's presence, because nothing else happened. The night was fine. I still had this horrible feeling, and it was good that he believed me. So I had someone to talk to about it, even though I didn't want to talk really after the initial informing him of it all. So I was still like sitting with a fairly decent amount of terror in me, and I needed to know that whatever we had was gone. I didn't want to just think, okay, maybe it won't happen again. I knew that something needed to be done. It was either stuck to me, I felt like shit, or it was in the house, which I was pretty sure of. And at this point too, I have to add that everybody else in the house had heard footsteps. And it wasn't until after, when we all compared notes, that I knew that. So they'd all heard things, and my son had heard doors. My partner had woken up because of the footsteps, which is hard to wake him, period. So I had a little bit of validation and stuff going for me here. But so the night of telling him, I actually Googled a spiritual healer. I'm like, I need a spiritual healer. Okay, I don't want to go to a priest, because I don't want someone just like, and this is, we weren't religious, even though I'm baptized a Catholic. I didn't want, as per the movies I've watched, someone chanting Bible passages at something and infuriating it, and then leaving me to deal with a really angry, a terrifying thing. And I just thought that there was a good chance of that happening if I just reached out to the church. So I found a guy who had a website that actually looked normal. It didn't have, pictures of demons and ghosts and ghouls and stuff. It was very scientific and matter of fact. Maybe not scientific, just very matter of fact. And he'd been healing for a long time, and he had books written about him. And I thought, it's worth a shot, And I texted this guy, just, look, there's something really dark in my house. I didn't go into all the details. I just said, I just feel like I need to see somebody like pronto. We're willing to pay the emergency healer's fee. And while I'm doing this again, I'm thinking, this is just crazy. Googling a spiritual healer. And I didn't really want to tell my partner what I was doing. I just kind of sat there and did it, and only told him afterwards. And the fellow got back to me, I think, the following morning. So I had a pretty anxious night because, yeah, I was terrified of being in the house at this point. And he said that he was out of the country. I thought, great. But he was going to get me in touch with another healer that was about 2 hours south from where we were, and that she would be in contact with me. I thought, great. The next morning, my partner went to work, and it was the first time that Chase and I were to be left in the house by ourselves since all the scary stuff, really. And I think, yeah, lunchtime he started to speak to something, and he was agitated by it. He wasn't crying and screaming. He was just a bit whingy about it. And it was just panic set over me again. And I had to get us, like nothing happened. It was just there was this feeling suddenly in the house that I had to get Chase out, whether it was my own anxiety or whether it was something kind of just pushing us out of the house, or just his reaction to something in the house was enough to make me get us out of the house. So I have my broken wrist, and I'm so desperate to get away that I can't even push little Mr. One in a pram. So I had to make him walk, holding my hand, probably for about 1 kilometre to the nearest shops, where I stayed in the shopping centre, just pushing him around in a trolley at this point, barely, with my one hand. Rang my partner and said, you need to come home. I don't want to go sit back in the house. But then the healer lady called me while I was walking around in the shops, and she said she could see me that very afternoon. And so, yeah, this is where just it gets crazier again. So we drove down to this lady, and I went in there and I laid on a table with her for about 4 hours thinking, I don't know whether this is, again, going to work and it's nuts, or if I'm praying at this point, like absolutely praying that it worked. I was reciting the Our Father in my head over and over again. I'd had to Google it so I could remember it from my youth. And I also bought a crucifix at the shops while I was walking around. And for some reason, it gave me this sense, it stopped the panic. I looked at this crucifix in the jewelry shop. I just was looking for anything to give me peace. And suddenly I had this feeling of relief. It didn't last for that long, but I said, I need to get that. Give that to me now. And it's still around my neck to this day. But so anyway, went down, I laid on this table for this lady, and she was like an energy healer. You know, she did things with her hands. We told her what happened first, like the whole experience. And she was just kind of like, yeah, this is all normal stuff.
It's almost like a Reiki type thing, is it?
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't know much about Reiki at the time, but it was a little bit more than that. She knew things, and she could, she was telling me stuff about my mother straight up, and weird stuff that was a bit like, okay, that's strange. But when she got me on the table, I said to her, I don't know if this thing has actually stuck itself to me but I feel noticeably different. And so after I've been on the table for like maybe 10 minutes, she had her hands over my belly area. And this woman did this for a business. This wasn't like a little backyard thing. She actually had a massive banner out at her front gates, which it was all in this beautiful rainforest sort of area, but at her front gates, it was spiritualhealer.com. I thought, could you get any more Google? I find spiritualhealer.com. So she had a separate little granny flat, if you will, where she obviously did her healings and stuff like that. And she was a Polish lady, beautiful, beautiful woman. So after 10 minutes, she has her hands around my belly area, and she says, just kind of quietly, she leans down towards my head as if someone's listening, and she says, yeah, you actually have an attachment. It's just like they're always in the belly, but it's just here. But, you don't worry about that. And I'm thinking, what the actual...
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, you've got something attached to you. It's not a problem.
Yeah, and she's just so matter-of-fact about it. Like, this is just, what I do for a job. It's just like making hamburgers. Okay. So she spent about, literally 4 hours, and it seemed to fly by me. And all she required from me was just breathing deeply. Okay, so relax, breathe deeply. And she just went around and did her thing around my head and feet. But I did feel something going on, and you're not sure if it's just I'm a bit traumatized at this point by the week's kind of events, so whether it was that. But I actually did feel something, and what struck me is that I actually felt this woman's I felt something coming out of her hands through my plaster cast on my wrist. And that was like, whoa, I can actually feel. And she was running her hand down my belly. But as she passed the area on my cast, it was like a warm pen being dragged down my arm. And I thought, well, that's crazy. I can feel this thing. She did this thing where she told me to imagine that my belly had an open sort of portal with a door spinning, I think, in a clockwise motion. And then she held a cupped hand. She said, if you want to go in there and have a look, like mentally picture the thing and have a look around, and which I didn't want to do because I didn't know if I would, if I was going to be making up imagery. I just thought, just do what you have to do, and
Yeah.
hopefully this works. And so she kind of has this cupped hand above my open, portal stomach, and she said, when I bring it down towards your stomach, as it touches your stomach, I want you to sit up and open your eyes like you're staring at something with great force. And you really sit up, really open your eyes. I thought, okay, it's going to look a bit ridiculous, but I'm prepared to do anything. So she did this. And then she had to do it about 3 or 4 times. And that scared me as well. It was because on the last one, I felt like something actually had a bit of blackness had come out of myself. And that is, again, it's so hard to describe how that felt. But she got her hands and she went, without me saying anything, she went, that was a yucky one. Like, she had to go and wash her hands. It was like she had sticky something on her hands from what she was doing. And I thought, okay, that's, again, strange. So she finishes this at 3, like, now you're done. Now you're cooked, I think was how she put it. You're cooked now. And I was like, so are you sure that, we're good? I can go home and sit on the lounge like a normal person again? And she brings out a bottle of holy water in a spray bottle, like what you do to your cat, I guess, when it's getting on the lounge, and a crucifix. And this is where it's getting a bit Hollywood for me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I hope nothing happens when she sprays me with this. And I'm still laying on the table and she sprayed it like in a fine mist above my body and put the crucifix onto my forehead. And I didn't, hiss, or my head didn't spin, and nothing bad happened. And
Good.
I thought, okay, well, that's reassuring that she's done that, and that, at least that'll make me feel like something maybe happened. I think we paid her $200 for the 4 hours of this woman standing over me, which in hindsight, it was invaluable and it was priceless what she did. So I went home in the car, and the story won't go much longer. I know I've been talking your ears off, but it's actually,
it's interesting.
it's cathartic to speak about it when I don't really speak about it. So
Yep. We don't mind.
So driving home, I still kind of felt, a little bit anxious about going home. So I didn't really think anything had greatly changed. And we got home, and Chase he did. He started to talk to something again. And I just kind of jumped up from the lounge and made some sort of grunted comment to my partner that, it didn't work. I can still see, he's still seeing things. There's still things around. And I went into the bathroom again. I think that's like I can hide from the baby spot. So
Yeah.
regardless of this horrible thing happening, I didn't feel like I was being threatened in the house anymore. So that was a good thing, but I was still a bit nervous. But the weirdest thing I noticed in the quiet of the bathroom was that everything was quiet. It was like, I'm a musician. I have been for most of my life. I've always got a song playing or something, a list going on that I have to do. There's just always something going on. And there was nothing. And I thought, that is really, really, really strange. But good, maybe this woman cleaned out a lot of stuff that I had floating around. The next morning I woke up, and it was, this is the part that sounds the nuttiest of all, but I felt so unbelievably, amazingly good. It's just undescribable. It was almost like I thought maybe she'd put me under hypnosis or something, and it was like a delayed hypnosis that took, half a day to kick in or something, or, overnight sort of thing to start. It was just such a weird, euphoric, absolutely 100% euphoric feeling. And the thing is, this didn't last for a moment or a day or, seconds like the scary thing in the bathroom. This lasted for 8 days. And I had to keep a diary of it, and I had to, it was just so extraordinary what was going on. I kept a video diary of it. I just journaled. I knew it was something that I needed to document because it felt more profound than having children. It was just such an incredible, weird feeling. And it was a feeling of like, this is where it feels nutty, of feeling a higher conscience, like, the higher spirit or God, if you will, and I quince when I say God but that's how it felt. I felt like I had something communicating with me for 8 days that was just nothing but pure, positive good. It was like everything around us. And in that 8 days, it just literally changed my life. Like, I don't know. I know that this woman removed something from me. And my partner now, I think after a year of seeing that, how much I guess I've changed. Yeah, I think he's 100% like, and he just thinks it's just a matter of fact thing. Or she just removed something of you and just revealed all the stuff that was already there. But because the strangest part, besides the whole I'm feeling, something bigger than myself that I didn't really believe in before, and now my whole belief system's thrown into, massive turmoil, or not turmoil, it was blissful turmoil.
Yeah.
It was so strong that really the only people that I felt were close, well, they surpassed my experience, but the only people that I felt had similar experiences were people that had near-death experiences, where they feel something much bigger than themselves, but they see things. I didn't see anything, but I felt like I was in this whirlwind of euphoria. And the way it stopped was the strangest thing, and this is day 8. We'd gone into the Gold Coast for the day and returned home. And I'd been feeling, everybody else's, I felt like I could feel other people's stuff, like emotions, not what they're thinking, but emotions. It was almost like
You'd
having
become
your
more
ears
sensitive.
Yeah, it was like if having your ears cleaned out and you can just feel everything. It was like this woman had cleaned out so much junk that suddenly I was just sensitive to even plants. Walking into the gardening section of the local hardware store just felt amazing. It was just the strangest thing. And I thought, this is weird. But by day 8, it was starting to get just tiresome. It was euphoria for nonstop 8 days, almost like she'd slipped something in the water.
It does seem almost like hypnosis,
But that's exactly how it felt. It was so like such an altered state of my normal consciousness was completely changed. And all I'd done at the lady's house was drunk some water. And I said to my partner, did you drink the water as well? And he was like, actually, no, I didn't. I thought, great. But it was a delayed thing. This didn't start, the moment that I walked out. And I didn't expect any great any reaction to what she was doing, bar hopefully not feeling the anxiety that I was feeling. And that was as good as I thought it was going to get from seeing this lady. And yeah, I wasn't prepared for what I felt afterwards. And there was part of me that felt a bit, I had to speak to her again about it. I did see her again about 2 weeks later, and I explained it all to her then. And she just kind of looked at me like, oh, well, that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be feeling other people's stuff. And I'm like, but I am feeling other people's stuff. Don't know why. Don't really want it. How do I stop this? And she just that just puzzled me a little bit because and I felt a bit let down, to be completely honest, not by her, but just that I couldn't get some sort of answer as to what to do, or that she knew this was going to happen, or that she had any sort of, that's just normal, because she didn't give me any of that. And it was a bit weird.
Do you think that maybe you had this attachment, if that's what we're going to call it, for an extended period of time, maybe outside of that week, but maybe you'd had it for years, and maybe it was suppressing your emotional sensitivity for a long period of time, and then when it was lifted, then I suffered with a lot of pain going back a couple of years ago, and it was constant, and I didn't realise how much pain I was in until the pain went.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly thought, wow, I feel better now than I have in years and years and years. What's going on?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you think that maybe it could have been a similar sort of thing?
You've just explained how I feel about it 100%. And it was a weird thing because synchronicity was happening a lot in this week. Like, I would think of things and, just weird, coincidental, crazy stuff was happening. And I was saying to myself, how long has this thing been in me? And this is, I think, on the drive back from the second visit to Annetta. And notably, nothing crazy happened after the second visit, which was a bit, but it's just, I guess, proof that the first thing she did was kind of crazy and it worked. But as I was asking how long I could have possibly been having this thing for, we went past an ice cream factory that had a great big sign on top of it that said since 1976, which is the year that I was born. And I kind of thought that it was just a crazy coincidental thing, but just something that stood out. Like as soon as my eyes saw it, it was like I was being told something. And that's how it felt. It was something like what I was feeling I'd never felt before. It wasn't like, oh, I feel like the old me. This was like a whole different, I'd never ever felt like the person that I since still feel like, which is marvelous, really, from my perspective. Whatever she did was marvelous.
So after the 8 days, what kind of happened then? Did it just...
We went out for the day and we'd come home and Chase started talking to something again in the kitchen, and he wasn't troubled by it. It was just like a little bit of just small talk, whatever it was. But I went into the bathroom. I was just kind of frustrated. I'd been in this 8-day cycle of crazy, stuff. Went into the bathroom again. It must be where I do all my deep thinking. And this isn't the toilet, mind you, it's separate. So I went in there and I said to the universe, or to the air in the bathroom, if you will, I said, if feeling energy is my new normal, or is going to be my new normal. And I remember that the word normal was the last word that I said in my head. I don't think I said it out loud. It was just a very direct mental question. But as soon as the end of the word normal, like right on the L letter, the euphoria stopped. And I mean, just suddenly stopped. Everything suddenly felt like normal. I mean, different, but normal. And it was almost, it was funny because the question I'd said was, okay, so if this whole feeling energy is supposed to be my new normal, right on the word normal, everything stopped, almost like whiplash speed. It was just a sudden stop. And it's like, I guess, it's not like being drunk, but it was akin to being, maybe drunk and then instantly sober. Like in an instant. It was the strangest, I guess to me it was a really definitive moment that I was being told something. And yeah, ever since then, feeling other people's stuff has been my new normal. But she didn't get rid of all the stuff that was in the house. The bad stuff was gone. Whatever was attached to me, I guess, was the bad stuff that was making the whole house feel like rubbish and making me feel like rubbish. So the anxiety was completely gone. The house felt a lot better, but Chase was still talking to things. And it was almost as if just there was a procession of things for just a few days after the whole healing thing. So while I was still having this euphoric experience, there was still things going on. Things like someone cooking sausages in the kitchen while I was home alone and my partner was doing a fireworks wedding. And it was, how obvious sausages smell when they're being cooked. They're unmistakable. Mm-hmm. And someone was in the kitchen cooking them, and then the smell would just disappear. And this only happened the one night, and then it would start again 20 minutes later and disappear. And I thought maybe it was the old lady that had built the house. I knew the history of the house as one family before us. And I thought maybe whatever this nasty thing was, now that it was gone, I thought maybe the older lady had popped in just to say hi and cook some sausages in the kitchen. So I kind of found myself going, look, if that's you, I'm going to look after your house. Thank you for your house. You need to go and be happy somewhere. We're good. And that's how it's kind of been ever since. I haven't felt her or smelt sausages, and that hasn't happened. But Chase still talks to something that he calls, I don't know if it's puppy or if it's bubby. So it's either a baby or it's a dog. And this is the one that I've put on Facebook, where he's pointing up at the top of the cupboards. And it's always on top of the cupboards and on one side of the lounge room. So they're only 2 spots, and they just always appear in the same spots. But it's not threatening, and it's not, there's nothing intimidating about it. And Chase certainly isn't bothered by it, hence why we're still there. And it's actually really started to die down now. So it almost feels like and I should knock on wood now that I've said that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's gotten, a lot more peaceful, and he's not really, it was a daily thing of him talking to it, and it hasn't happened for a week or so at the moment. So fewer and further between. But now I'll come up for air.
That's okay. Looking at your Instagram, there's a few images on there that are quite shocking. You've got
The
one.
bruises? You mean?
Yeah, so you've got one here. This was day 3 after experiencing the most terrifying series of events that led us first to seek help. My right thigh, buttock, and lower back were covered in these finger-like marks. So you've got that one, and then you've got another one where you're actually showing pictures of scratches or welts on your skin. So when did all of that happen? When did that come into it?
The actual bruises and things, they were happening well before the week of terrifying stuff. The first lot in the Instagram page had happened probably months before, which, you know, lends to the fact that we had something going on for a lot longer, or to me for a lot longer. I showed my partner and he's like, well, you thrash around in your sleep a bit. And I thought, that's the side that I sleep on. How can I be, you know, their fingerprint, they look like finger
They do.
marks.
They look like fingerprint bruises, little fingerprints, yeah.
They weren't quite bruises. They were more like, they were kind of, they wouldn't rub off or anything like that, but they weren't like sore to touch and they would disappear after about 2 days. But yeah, they lasted for a few days, but they didn't disappear in the way that bruises would. So they were just baffling me, and my partner's thinking, you know, that I'm doing it myself. And I'm thinking, I don't think so. But you question yourself again, how else could it be happening? And then the second lot, which were terrible, I had them, well, it wasn't the second lot. This has probably happened about 4 times maybe. So that last lot was actually the day, and I don't know why I've put it in there a few days. Oh, no, because I would have taken the photo a few days after. Okay, I get it. The day that the bruises actually came out was the day that all of the terrifying crap happened. So, because I remember just looking at them with just like, oh no, I've got to be on, you know, I'm going to be online roller skate, or I was going to be in roller skating gear on the web, and here I've got these marks all over my leg and, you know, up my back. So I didn't look at it as, oh shit, that's, you know, could be a ghost. I looked at it as, oh shit, that's really inconvenient, and just wanted to get rid of them as quickly as I'm trying to put things on them. So I didn't photograph them at first. It was just a matter of getting rid of them. But it was terrifying. They were all the way up, you know, my buttocks and my lower back, from like basically my knee, like the top of my knee, and they curled around to my back and went up towards my back. And that was the last time that I really had was covered in things like that. But that's just those ones.
We've had on our show before guys from the Supernatural Paranormal Unexplained Network, and I spoke to Drew, one of the members, the other day, and mentioned the fact that I was going to be talking to you today, or that we were going to be talking to you today. And I asked him if, as an investigator, whether he had any questions that he wanted to ask. And he wanted to know whether, when the things were occurring, whether you had any sense that they were about to occur. So whether you suddenly had maybe heightened anxiety, or there was a temperature change or a smell or anything like that that would maybe give you some kind of indication that something was going to start happening.
Yeah, the sausage.
That felt comforting for some strange reason. It just felt like someone, I don't know, letting you know that they're there, but in a really nice sort of way.
Yeah, in a homely way, yeah.
I don't think it's a nice way, because I would have wanted some, and there wouldn't be any for me to have.
They did smell pretty good. Like wherever she got her snags from, they were pretty good. But yeah, there was definitely a sense of apprehension a few times. Like when I would see things out of the corner of my eye, and that's, I guess, why I was asking myself, am I just being paranoid? But there was that little bit of, but I'm not normally an anxious sort of person. But as for smells and temperature drops and things like that, no, I don't recall anything like that happening. And that would have been something that I would have probably noticed straight away. But then again, we have an air conditioning unit right above where Chase was lying in his jumping castle that afternoon.
Right.
So, you know, there could have been temperature drops, but because we have this blasting thing, yeah, it would have been hard to denote any of them. So.
Okay, and he also wanted to know, did the activity happen at certain times of day or night, or when there was only certain people around? I know that you said when your partner wasn't in, it tended to be more prevalent, if you like. Yeah, no, I don't think it discriminated about time of day. I think what it was when I was alone, or when Chase and I were alone. So, yeah, it was happening in the daytime. You know, I was seeing things in the daytime. Chase was having all his conversations basically were in the daytime. But yeah, I was seeing things at night. Felt like I was being watched at night. That still happens in the house. I still
don't like sitting in the lounge room once my partner's gone to bed. It's just a certain doorway where I just feel like there's someone standing there looking at me, and I just kind of shift across the lounge to a point where it can't, where I'm
Yeah.
out of its view.
Mm.
But yeah, so I there was that sense of being watched, and it was a really foreboding kind of feeling that, yeah, I still am not 100% safe, but that was a ghost or not my paranoia of feeling it. But yeah, that stopped. So that makes me, except for the watching of the night, but it only happens when Aaron's gone to bed. I don't feel it in the daytime when I'm sitting on the lounge by myself. It's just a nighttime when Aaron's not around.
You mentioned that you knew the history of the property and that there was a lady that was in there before. What was the history of it? Was it just a normal sort of just a family home, elderly people, they died, the house became vacant? Is that the kind of thing? Or
Yeah, the people that lived, the only other family that lived there had built the home. And from what I'd learnt from the neighbour who'd lived there for a long time, was that they'd once they'd raised their children, they'd moved off. I think the wife might have died in the house. Yeah, I think she might have passed away in the house, I think. And the husband passed away in a nursing home, from what I can gather.
right.
Yes. So I know that they're both gone, and I'm pretty sure that she went in the house. But we've only ever felt her that one time when I could smell sausages, because it was just so definitive that I felt like it was her in her kitchen. And the people that we rent off just bought the house purely to flip it, so they renovated it and we moved in. So
Right.
it's had a big facelift, the last couple of years. So it could have stirred up things, but in my gut, I don't think that the terrifying thing that we experienced was from the house. I don't think it was human. I don't believe that was a human's energy that would make such a horrible feeling, call me nuts, or it's just, I don't think that it was. It just felt like pure evil. And that's why it was so nice to feel pure good for a week afterwards, because it really blasted that feeling out of me. It was like it kind of flushed it out and it didn't have a hold on me anymore, sort of thing.
Did the spiritual healer do anything with Chase, or was it just with yourself?
Nope, she did do with my partner though. He went and saw her 2 weeks later and had a healing as well. But he didn't, I'm thinking he's going to experience what I experienced. And I said to him the other day, we were talking about this, the whole, I thought you were going to do this or feel this like I did. And I said, I was literally saying, hold on to your nuts, hubby, you're in for a ride. This woman's going to just, blow your mind. And it didn't happen, which was a bit like, he did feel some weird stuff on the table. He's one of the most sensible, he is the most sensible person I've ever met in my life. So he's not someone that would go into descriptive, it felt like this, and he just had a vision of a spider on his shoulder that was frantically running around. And I think it disappeared ran into his mouth and disappeared into a sore tooth. And it took him weeks to tell me this. And I looked at him cockeyed like, what? Was it a real spider? Was it really there? And he went, I don't know. I'm not sure if it was really there or if I just kind of, I don't know.
That would have freaked me out. I'd have been out of that office as quick as you can blink.
Yeah, he's a bit better with spiders than I am. But yeah, he couldn't actually say, he didn't want to say that it was, something, that it was an energy spider or God knows what spider. He was like, I don't know if it was there or not. That's as best I can do. And I went, okay, that's interesting.
Where are you at now in terms of the activity in the house? How is everything now today?
Well, everything now it's beautiful. As I said, this experience just was such a mind-blowing thing that I have dedicated now. Just kind of happened the last year to understanding energy healing, and I've become a Reiki master myself. Excellent. I work, not tirelessly, but I work on the energy of the house and I'm not like a fanatic that goes around. I don't need to burn sage and stuff all the time. I have done it in the house, but I don't feel like I need to. But yeah, I'm constantly monitoring the house for anything that feels a bit yucky, but we haven't seen or heard or felt anything as negative as was before. And the extent of it these days is just Chase waving and pointing at the thing on top of the cupboards in the kitchen or the corner of the lounge room. And the frequency of that is starting to really lull at the moment. And I'm actually in our old house that we're renovating, so I'm not talking about these things while they're floating around listening to me,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Right.
But yeah, so it's not happening, but it's nothing that we feel like anything that we need to leave, or, and the house actually feels lovely.
And it's nothing that Chase seems to be concerned about now if he's waving at it.
Yeah, definitely not. Like, absolutely. And that's the one thing I think that would get us out of the house, before anything else, is if we thought that he was being made fit to feel uncomfortable by anything, we'd be straight out of there. But just a happy little groover that's kind of got some chipped teeth at the moment, but he's
bless him.
still happy despite that at the moment. But yeah, and the teen doesn't hear anything. His name's Roland. He doesn't have any problem there. He's always got his mates staying the night. So yeah, no one feels funny in the house, and no one else has reported any, footsteps, or haven't heard anything crazy like that. And it all that stuff, the really audible, all the noises stopped as soon as we saw Annetta, and the lady's name was. So yeah, it was just crazy for me, because I believed in ghosts. I didn't believe it would happen to me, and I didn't for a second think that I would experience something so intense from both ends of the spectrum, it does just throw your whole belief system into absolute turmoil briefly, until you work out that it's okay to believe these things happen, and it's okay to own it when it does happen and do something about it, which I'm glad I did, beyond words.
Brilliant. I mean, it's nice to hear there's a happy ending. If other people want to learn a little bit more about you and what you do, and maybe a little bit more about the story, is there any way they can get in contact with you?
Oh, well, they can always drop me a line on Instagram. Yeah, that's probably the most direct way to do it. So that's, living_haunted, all in lowercase, obviously, yeah. I think everything has to be lowercase on Instagram. I don't know. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk about it with anyone that's interested to learn more about it, or maybe even anyone that's had an experience that this resonates with and they just want to share that. I love meeting people that have had this sort of stuff happen.
And you said that you're a Reiki master now as well. So do you have a website or anything that you'd like to promote while we're at it?
Not yet. I think I'm going to tune my skills a bit further. It's just such a fascinating thing. And yeah, it'll probably be happening in the next 2 years. I think I'll start extending beyond my friends and my family for Reiki treatments once I really, know everything there is to know about it. But it's amazing. It really is an amazing sort of thing. And I guess it's not a stretch to think, if we've got energy running around in the form of people that have passed, or, God forbid, the even worse stuff, and there's energy governing all of us. To me, it's just logical sense now that, that it's all relative, and energy healing is as prevalent as ghosts. So,
absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Well, listen, thank you very much for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it, and it was really interesting hearing about your story, and certainly hearing that it had a happy ending, and that thankfully, there was no one sort of hurt, damaged by it to any great extent. And maybe, as you said, you've had something lifted off of you now that has been maybe suppressing you for a long time. So who knows now what you can achieve and where you can go from here.
Stay tuned, huh?
And on that note, if anything else happens, please get back in touch with us. You've got our contact details. Get back in touch with us.
Absolutely.
And we'd love to hear about it.
Look, and thank you for letting me chat your ears off for all this time. And thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to talk.
No problem at all. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
You too. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? At what point would you leave the house? Because we've had stuff going on here, haven't we? We've had the items thrown off the top of the cupboard. We've had footsteps going up and down the stairs. You had that thing when you were at home on your own with the wet dishcloth that you'd left on the draining board that was wet, so it was heavy. You then went in there later on.
It was in a perfect little teepee.
It had been made into a teepee, yeah. So, I mean, at what stage would you have left the house?
Well, I think as soon as it gets physical, I would have to leave. If there was something in this house that could hurt me, physically hurt me, I would have to go. But anything that hurt Bryce, I would just be like, that's it, we gotta go.
Yeah, I mean, luckily nothing happened to Chase, a young lad, so that's pretty cool. It was interesting, off air we spoke to Harmony afterwards, and we mentioned the fact that, been brought up a couple of times on previous shows, that who would you call if something really started to happen? Would you go to a priest? And it's quite interesting, in this case,
she didn't go to a priest, she went to a spiritual healer. And we know of cases, don't we, which we looked into before, where people have gone to a priest and then the experiences have escalated. So maybe that is the way forward. We'd be interested to learn from any of our listeners if you've been in a similar situation and maybe the priest situation has helped, or maybe you have gone to a spiritual healer as well. Get in touch with us, weirdwackywonderful@outlook.com.
The thing is, if you bring a priest into your house because you think there's something evil in your house, you're going to piss it off. You're going to provoke it. But if you bring a spiritual healer into the house, maybe it isn't just the person that you're soothing or treating or whatever you want to call it when you go. Maybe a ghost or a spirit or whatever it is. I'm not saying like something totally evil, the devil or something.
The entity.
But something that was once human was a lot less threatening because you're bringing in this healer. The healer's not saying you have to leave. The healer is saying get off of this person because they don't like it.
Yeah.
You can stay here if you want to, wander around, do whatever, but that's her spot, that's her space. You shouldn't be there. And that would come across a lot less threatening, in my opinion. If you bring a priest in and the spirit or ghost or whatever you want to call it was once human, but they weren't Catholic, you're going to piss them off. And they're going to go, well, kiss my ass. I'm going to start breaking your stuff now. So because of being a spiritual healer, it's not really so religious, is it?
Well,
it's
the
not
interesting
really...
thing is that the spiritual healer didn't go into her house, did it?
No, that's
they
what I'm
went
saying.
to her.
Yeah.
So the entity, if the entity was staying in the house, let's just say, for instance, the entity was still at the house while she was away getting treated at this spiritual healer, then maybe what the spiritual healer did was remove an attachment, as she said, but also maybe somehow amplified her own spirit, Harmony's own spirit.
To make it stronger.
Yeah, so that when she went back into the house, the entity in there thought, screw this, there's no way I'm going to calm it down now because she's been to the gym,
but
the spiritual gym.
Yeah, but the other thing is, if she has an attachment and it's on her all the time, then it went to the Reiki healer too.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
And maybe that spirit thought, well, wait, I'm not trying to scare her.
But she heard multiple voices when she was in the bathroom at that point. So maybe there was one on her and the conversation, because she said it was as if there was a conversation going on and one said, let's try schizophrenia, or let's give schizophrenia a try, shall we? Then maybe the attachment on her was different from other attachments that were in the house, and maybe what she was experiencing was conflicts between the two, or maybe more than two, because there was lots of voices, and also potentially the ghost or the spirit of the previous occupant of the house who's now in there cooking sausages, which is quite, really, when you think about it, that's quite a homely sort of thing to do, isn't it? Cooking food for the family, etc., etc. So maybe that's why Chase, her son, is now feeling quite secure and waving at it and maybe thinking of it as a friendly figure.
Well, I wish somebody would come here and make me some sausages, bacon.
And that's my cue to get the frying pan on, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll be all right with that.
Yeah, I got pancakes. I'll do some pancakes and eggs.
Ghosts, if you come to make me breakfast, make sure it actually appears so I can eat it. Oh, and while you're at it, you could make the calories disappear. That would be good. So that way I could eat anything.
Yeah, we would all like that.
Yeah.
Well, people, we've come to the end of the show. As always, don't forget you can connect with us via Instagram. We are Weird, Wacky, Wonderful Podcast. On Twitter, we are at the WWW Podcast. And our website is www.weirdwackywonderful.co.uk. And you can get in touch with us on there should you wish to do so via our contact page. And other than that, please remember to stay
weird, wacky, and wonderful. Bye.